So, hey, thanks everybody for coming. I am Chris Wisman, one of the board members of New England Aqua Ventus. I want to start tonight. The real focus tonight is to really, it's good to see old and new friends, first of all, is to talk about the local impacts that we had over the last couple of weeks, where we had this unannounced intrusion into the neighborhood. And so I want to start with, first of all, saying that we really apologize for that. That was, in my mind, utterly uncalled for in terms of not telling people what's going on in advance, not rapidly telling people what was going on during it. So we really messed up. That's one of the reasons we're here, and we're here. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. That's one of the reasons we're here in force, right? We wanted to, we are totally not ready for community meetings, right? We're in the early phases of figuring stuff out. In this meeting, last night's meeting, is really a courtesy to you all to let you know what's going on, right? What I thought I would do, since there's different levels of understanding of the project that this table is related to, I'll start with just kind of a couple minutes on orientation for what this project is, this offshore wind project, what it is, and how that, why a cable is required and why it's here. What I'd like to do is I'll probably speak for 10 or 15 minutes and then glad to field questions. There's a lot of stuff that you guys can't see from afar that will be on these poster boards, particularly as we get to maps. We've got 4 different sets if we want. In a half hour or so, we are glad to break into other groups. You guys can look at this. There's enough of us here that. So with that, I'm going to start. The project that we're talking about is a single offshore wind turbine, right? It comes out of a process that was started almost 10 years ago, where the state of Maine wanted to start looking at impacts, how it could mitigate climate change, and how it could foster local ideas and create local jobs. The University of Maine came up with this idea for a floating offshore wind foundation. Because if you're going to put offshore wind in the Gulf of Maine, it's deep water, it has to be floating, right? You can't reach the bottom in 300 foot of water, it just becomes prohibitively expensive. So the University of Maine came up with this great idea of a floating foundation that's made out of concrete, right? And that's different than the vast majority of the world. Most of the world is making foundations out of steel. Concrete is what allows this foundation to be built locally, creating local jobs. So that's really the whole idea here, is to sort of create a pathway for Maine to get jobs out of offshore wind. The purpose specifically is of this project, right, is prove that this design can be built cost effectively and prove that we can build it with main contractors. Is that better for you? Good. I didn't put my glasses on this. Right? So the cable that we're talking about that comes through the community is the cable that winds this route from off of Monhegan. I'm going to say roughly 20 miles, roughly? Yes. 20 miles to shore, right? And then finds its way back to the substation that's kind of like right down the road here, right at the corner of 27. And the reason it comes all the way back here is because that's where kind of the electric grid is. To go out on the country roads, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. We have to connect to something that's pretty big. And the cable that we're talking about is sized to only ever handle one wind turbine's worth of output. This will never, it can't be expanded to be more. We have pledged to the town that it would never be more. We can't, you can't stuff any more power into no matter what you do. So it's not part of a bigger wind farm. It's just this project ever. The planned cable, and this is where it's really hard for you all to see these. Which way to big screen, but the planned cable is really no different than the cable you see like feeding power to Vinyl Haven. Several of the islands are powered. The cable to Vinyl Haven comes to Rockland, right? Goes out to Vinyl Haven. And they put it. It just was laid on the seabed. That wore out after a while, and then it was jet cloud into the seabed, so it's sort of 6 feet below ground, so that once it's out of sight, it's out of mind, and doesn't pose any obstacle to fishing, anchors, anything like that. So people have been living and fishing around this stuff for years. The very last thing I want to say relates just at a high level to timeline, and we'll talk about timeline in a minute, is that the installation, I know there were a lot of information floating around as we had a drill truck on the streets last week and the week before, that it seemed like construction was imminent. Construction is like by no means imminent. This is something that is 2 years away. Installation of the cable earliest would start fall of 2023, so 2 years-ish from today. And that's kind of the earliest. Next slide. Let's go. All right, well, we can go to cable route, but this is the one where everybody kind of wants to see it closely. It's a little hard to see from the distance. So as developers, we know we want to get, and it's on the really little slide, from point A, right, waterfront, Bigelow, to point B, the substation up the road here. And so our process is to figure out, well, what are the alternatives? How can we figure out the least intrusive way to put it? I have a better word in a different slide. But what we have done here is we've sketched out, to the best of our early knowledge, a couple of possibilities. What was done over the past couple of weeks was exploration, right, to figure out what's there along the side of the road. Is it bedrock 2 inches down? Is it bedrock 6 feet down? And that's what this drill rig did. It drilled into the ground to help figure that out. And it also helps us figure out what the soil is underneath there. So you can figure out when you're going to bury it. Do you need a wide trench because it's super soft soil that just kind of falls in, or you can dig a narrow trench? So I thought we had really good feedback last night on different opinions on this. I'm going to hold that thought for a minute on cable routes, because this seems to be the topic that we want to talk about most. So hold that thought while I get through a couple of different posters. Let's, what do you have up next on that side? Let's go to, all right, while we're on cable. All right. So some basic options. One of the things that we came in with, and we, through early dialogue, we understood that pretty much people don't want new overhead cables, right? We got enough telephone poles going up the street. The last thing we want to do is see more. So we, although it costs more, we felt, all right, we will just agree to bury this and have, therefore, like minimal impact. We thought, I'm saying, we thought minimal impact on the community. And then if buried, we want to find a route that requires no blasting is our by far our preference, and I imagine yours. And so that's what the exploration is about. Let's figure out a route that can involve no blasting. So our options are, and this is basically kind of the wide range. These are cross sections if you were to look through the ground. So this is the ground surface. And one option is to put, so this is 3-phase power that comes out of this wind turbine. So one option is to put those 3 phases, each have a cable, an armored cable, that go into a conduit. So imagine 6-inch PVC conduit, right? 3 cables across, that's what we're looking at here. The second would be a fiber optic in a smaller conduit. That's our preference. This would only be 18 inches wide, maybe 18 inches deep. Maybe, don't know. And it might be like this for a half a mile and do something different the next half mile. Again, don't know yet. The wild extreme is if you had sort of softer soils and they're going to fall in, so you got to make a wider trench to get your cables down below, and you have to spread them out for whatever reason. You could be 3 feet wide, 3 feet deep. And then between these, you have sort of any variation. You might find that you got to do this, but it's only shallow, right? Because you've got bedrock below it. So a lot of our exploration is to kind of figure this out. What are the options and what would it mean for each segment of road? I'm sorry, I'm looking over at you guys. I'm seeing a picture. Let's go to the timeline first. Or next. So when I said we're early in the process, we are early in the process. We haven't filed for permits, none of that stuff, right? Where we are, and this is where we were 2 weeks ago, this subsurface survey, right? Drilling. We're going to have those results early winter, right? And it's not just, so that's engineers doing the engineering thing, right? What does it mean? What did we hit? Did sand come out? Did mud come out? What is that soil like? And so what that will do is allow us to then look at the roots, whether we found rock or found whatever it is, and come up with what we suggest to the community is a good solution. And that's from our viewpoint. Now, our viewpoint is clearly different than the community's, as we learned last night from several of you who had really good dialogue. Our goal is to basically, during this period, probably late winter, early spring, be able to put a diagram up here that says, here's what we found and here's what we suggest, and put that in front of the community, and then be able to talk about it in more detail. Our goal is to finalize what we call a route selection somewhere in the early summer, and that sort of triggers then the permitting process. As I said, we're not going to be building anything until you go all the way out here, almost 2024, and so that would be the period in time where people would see that we're actually digging up the streets, just like you see normal utility construction kind of anywhere. That's the period in time which would be digging up and laying. The whole process on all of the streets, beginning to end, is 60 to 90 days. So any segment of road is no more than like a week or two. So it's not going to be 60 to 90 days in front of your house. I'm pointing to you. I don't know if you have a house up there, right? It's not 60 to 90 days in front of each house. So that's that basic orientation to what we're doing. What I think we can go back to now is the route diagrams, and I'll kind of walk you through from the A to B.
Are you guys including the route from Bigelow down on their own side?
So this hasn't changed from last night.
I know,
Yeah.
but last night you guys said.
It's a really good idea.
So I just wondering.
I'm on the fence about whether I say that or whether this group comes up to the same conclusion. But my view is let's build on last night. Everybody good with that? Great. Okay.
What was that mark here last night? Can you just-
Yeah. So I'll start at the beginning and I'll say what was discussed last night. So I'm going to go to this side. Right here. So we're going from right here would be the cable landing. So that's where this long cable from offshore comes onshore. And what had been discussed was coming out to the side, right, over to School Street, right, turning left, Murray Hill Road, and then potentially winding its way through here. And our thought was originally that would be less disruptive to the community than digging up the road through here, right? More traffic, more obstacles, potentially more bedrock. Now, what people experienced over the last 2 weeks was basically select how many boreholes were there total?
27 borehole between Bigelow and Virginia Lane, and Ocean Point Road.
To characterize again, what's in the ground. What we heard last night was grave concerns about the close quarters. School Street, Murray Hill Road, Mass Ave, right? And that this depicts us going across people's property, even though it's an easement for emergency use, it's not an easement for electric cables. So after a really good discussion, people pretty much said, why don't you just go out the Bigelow driveway and turn right on Route 96? That's a basically state road. Deal with the state on building in the state road. I asked for a show of hands. People thought it was a good idea. Everybody think that's a better idea than. Great. No,
That's
and that
right
was
into my
great.
driveway. I ain't sure I like it. You're gonna affect somebody everywhere you go. You know, it just seems, maybe this is a stupid question, but it seems to me like you're spending an awful lot of time and money on something that's never gonna produce enough energy to replace the energy you're putting into this thing. It's like a self-licking ice cream cone. What good is this? What, are you saying you're not gonna put any more of them? You get your promise, but you're not gonna put any more of them. So what is this one thing gonna do? Let's just pretend for a minute. Let's pretend for a minute, this thing can put out some energy.
Yep.
Enough energy to do something. Where are you gonna send it? Who's gonna get this energy?
Okay, so a couple questions in there. One is the energy payback on this is about 2 years. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 years. And that's, if you can imagine, the energy to make all the steel, make all the concrete, all that sort of stuff, and then the energy that this wind turbine puts out, right? So the purpose of this is to produce power, just like any power plant, for 20 years. 2-0. This project standalone, no other turbines. And it has right now a contract approved by the Public Utility Commission to sell power to CMP for a period of 20 years. So that's sort of the nuts and bolts of it.
How much?
It is a high price because it's a demonstration project. Yep, that was, no, seriously, that's before our time. So
I
it's
know,
just-
I'm just
Yep.
making a point.
Totally agree. But the idea was, that's how you pay for something like this. And this is again, the state policy to initiate offshore wind was to do a demonstration like this to get Maine on the pathway to building a new industry. That was the whole goal of the state's approval. It started like 10 years ago to get this. I think the MOU was 2014. Right? The contract was just.
As you know, I mean, and if you've ever built a house somewhere on an island, you know how much more difficult that is. Well, now you're putting something to try to maintain out in the middle of the ocean.
Believe me.
Ludicrous.
So we're on contract, so this is a worldwide industry now. And we were literally on with engineers in the Netherlands, first thing this morning, this is before coffee, because they're several hours ahead of us, talking about exactly that. And so the whole industry is now designing bigger vessels and floating cranes and all sorts of different stuff. The magnitude of this industry is like way bigger in Europe than it is here. What the state is keenly interested in is, so I'm just gonna back up a minute, right? Because the context is really important here. The Northeast states pretty much, and I'll say Northeast, maybe starting in New Jersey, have really committed to a path to zero carbon. Different states have different milestones and different ways they get there. But as a block, they've embraced offshore wind more than the rest of the country. California is really interesting, but it is deep. We think it's deep here. It's 3,000 feet deep, just like 3 miles offshore there. It goes straight down. So what the state is seeing is that to achieve goals for 4 states south of here, Massachusetts, namely, right? To get their goals, they're going to come and want projects in the Gulf of Maine. The state of Maine wants to be the builder of those projects, right? Get the contractors working here, get the ports set up to work here, answer questions like, how do you service these things in deep water, right? All that kind of stuff. And that's what this project is, the first little baby step to lead to. I don't know if you've heard about this other project, the research array. Anybody read about that or been part of those webinars, right? That's the next project that is meant to actually figure out how these can work at scale out in the deep ocean environment so that you can not mess up fishermen, right? Now, it's a big argument. What is not messing up fishermen mean? Yeah, it messes up fishermen to some extent. How do you do it less? And that's the purpose of the research array.
But on the
So-
mountains, we don't fish up there.
There's that, but then the people in the mountains say, put them offshore. So then who's the,
Ain't seen that many people up in the mountains.
yeah.
Way up north in the high peaks. mean,
Yeah, no,
you
no,
gotta
I hear you.
and then
I've
you
seen
can run a-
I've
you
seen
can
them,
drive to them with a
but then you
truck.
get transmission lines. And so it's a
Well,
debate. It's
you
not
gotta run
only
a
here.
Extension cord underwater. You
Yep.
can run it up with a truck instead of, it's all trying to get off the
I
grid.
hear you.
You're gonna service the thing for sailboats. I mean, what, think of the energy's gonna be put to service these things and try to maintain them.
This would be a great, like, if we weren't here to talk just about the last 2 miles of cable, I would love to put on a show and tell of the types of vessels, the type of service providers. That would be great. Maybe we can do that late in the winter if people like this sort of thing.
All right, well, I'll leave this alone and get back.
Yeah, yeah.
But I just want,
Yeah, I know. Some of you really want it, right? Like,
But if you back up even further, this was never supposed to come on the land. This was gonna be scale model, 2 of them off Monhegan that were gonna power Monhegan. They decided, Dr. Darger decided that 1, 2, he needed a full-size one. It's too much power for Monhegan, so it had become the link. Every town east of the Damascotta River rejected that power from coming to their town. So we're stuck
so
with it.
some of that is before my time, but I do know about the 2 turbine thing. The 2 turbines were, so you can't even buy turbines that small now. The whole market has gone to big turbines, so it
I'm just
basically.
saying that was the original plan.
Yeah, fair enough.
And they bought the guys off out there with money and told them they were gonna have power for their island. They weren't gonna be generators. And,
Yeah.
and this is where we're at.
I don't mean to cut you off, but
Yep.
if we could focus on these questions first. and get
Sorry.
those
Yeah,
out
that
of
would be
the
great.
way.
That'd be great. Yeah, so. No. So there's a couple different permits required. In fact, there's more than a dozen different
Correct.
permits. Oh, yeah, so the question was number 1 was, do we have a permit to build us? Answer is no. We haven't filed for permits yet. Several permits are required. So there's and I'm gonna need some help here from my experts. So Army Corps of Engineers, right? You'll have something with. It's finding of no significant impact as part of the environmental impact process. You heard of NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act. So that is a deep review that's conducted by the Department of Energy. You guys probably can't hear me. Go to the middle. So a NEPA review starts when we can say, hey, here's the project, including here's the cable route. So that's one. State, what is state permits?
We've got 480HH, which is specific to, 480HH, which is specific to offshore wind turbines off Monhegan. That's run by the state. There's the DEP, wetlands review, et cetera, where, anything impacted by the cable as it comes on shore.
Is this on our web? This is on the DOE website?
This is on the DOE website.
That might be easier way to just point you.
So we have state agencies, we've got federal agencies, Army Corps of Engineers is involved. And I'm drawing a blank right now.
Yeah.
So
Are you asking for who are the permitting agencies for the entire project or for the cable?
Several.
this specific part,
Oh, okay, got it.
so we'll have, essentially you need the DEP. And then you need, depending, we don't know yet, 100%, we don't know, it depends on where we go. But we need a road opening permit, right, and that will be issued by Boothbay Harbor and the State of Maine Department of Transportation. Because the current plan is to utilize existing utility corridors, essentially the roads that exist today, and not to utilize private individuals' property. So cutting across, we're trying to use existing disturbed areas to place the cable.
So the part that is permitted by the town. The town gives me permit. They will look at the DEP permits and everything else. If the town approves it for a permit.
They will issue a utility location permit. They will issue a highway opening permit. That's their responsibility when we use existing utility corridors.
Yeah, like,
We have over what's
really
going on.
administrative. Like if we have complied with laws, given the proper documentation. Yeah.
Can't hear you guys at all.
I think we're closing the door, yeah.
I'm asking what part of this the town is based on.
Yeah, nothing other than this. This is one of the forums to get back. So in this NEPA review, there are going to be public hearings once we file a permit application.
Public hearings held by.
Department of Energy, and they do a multi.
Now, we can't hear any of this now.
Yeah, this is.
So much for repeating questions.
Yeah.
Would you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, that's a great idea. People come up front.
I think you're all townspeople. I want to know who has control of the permits for this. And I was asking what agencies, there's a hierarchy of agencies usually when something like this is involved. I want to know what part the town has control over, or are we just so much noise? What aspects of this is controlled by the town of Boothbay?
Did you guys hear that? And in a nutshell, the answer was it's federal and state permits that are required. The local utility, what's the term?
Utility or existing utility corridors.
No, the permit to dig.
We're looking at a utility location permit and a highway opening permit. It's required to utilize existing utility corridors that we have within the town. And same thing within the state.
And those are pretty administrative, which is if we put forward the right, and this is anybody, any utility provider, with water, sewer, electric, puts forward a properly documented set of plans, follows all the state fee protocols, all the engineering protocols. It is essentially recording, to a certain extent, this recording where the thing's gonna go and that you're gonna do it right, and you obligate that you're gonna do it right. I don't believe the town has the ability to withhold that permit. Dan's shaking his head.
In a nutshell, the answer to the question is there is no.
Right, it's not a local oversight, yeah, that's right. And to a certain extent, part of this then goes on the record. There's a set of plans that are finally as built that appear in town hall. So if the next guy wants to come along and dig, they know where we put ours.
So, actually, I think what Mark was pointing to here is actually quite important, which is the history of this project.
Yeah,
uh,
otherwise we're doing.
The history of the Monhegan project is actually quite interesting because this has been tried to get into Spruce Head, it's been tried to get into Fort Clyde, it's been tried to get into Friendship, it's been trying to get into Bristol. Every one of these communities has had an opportunity as a community to be able to have say in their own local governments over how this project could go. And they were able to change zoning requirements inside of that community to be able to keep themselves from accepting it. Fort Clyde, they would have had to come into town property, put a substation in, underground for a short period of time, and then go overhead wires. Bristol, they would have had to put in much larger overhead wires and cut a new power line to come in. Each one of those communities has been able to fight it off and not accept it for various reasons, because it's a test site. These guys here with Diamond, whether they want to admit it or not, are part of the offshore research array. I'm on the fisheries board with the governor's energy office. They're on every one of those meetings. That's another test site that this platform could be tested. The timeline, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, is actually not that far apart. It's actually 3 years, 2 years. Okay.
At least 3, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty tight. So the point here is that what's happened is that they've started to use public utility right of ways, and they found a piece of private property that they've been able to come ashore on. And then by utilizing the public utilities right of way, they've allowed us so that we as townspeople have no say in how this cable goes in. That's why there's no, oh, well, this is when we're just going to start building. It's that we actually don't have a mechanism to be able to essentially stop this. Just think.
So yeah,
about that.
that's
It's all been put
yeah.
in the state hands. We have no way of stopping this. I talked to the governor's energy office. There's no government agency which is overseeing this. They are merely commenting on it. It's a private entity at Bigelow Laboratories for Ocean Sciences that allowed this to come in. And as townspeople understand, you have no way of stopping this.
We got something to say about Bigelow Lab. It's kind of backdoor of Bigelow to this outfit to bring us into town without talking to the townspeople, and your courtesy of giving us having this meeting after the fact sounds hollow to me, because it's obviously you got caught with a hand in the cookie jar, and now you just want to tell us how it's going to, you want to pretend like you have our best interest at heart, but you don't. It's you against this community, and Bigelow Lab is squarely on your side. This is going to hurt the fishing community, just like the right whale information that Bigelow's come up with that keep people from fishing. The same areas are going to be shut down. And who's to say that this little, the operation you're talking now doesn't become a big wind farm and need new, bigger cables later? I mean, there's so much about this that is just wrong. The whole way this was done shows the intent of you and Bigelow Lab. And personally, I find it reprehensible that you would even come here and act and try to glad hand the community after this. You're the enemy.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that we're the enemy. Would you prefer we don't show up and talk to you and just forge ahead quietly, or?
I'm happy to see who's
Yeah.
front on it.
Yeah.
And while we're at it, why don't you give us all your home addresses, because we can go bore some holes in your front.
So this is part of where we were, I think some people were a little bit tone deaf. We live in a little bit more urban areas than this, and we see utility work in the road in front of our house all the time. So we didn't think anything of it. I mean, it just happens as sort of routine. I'm sorry?
That's why we don't live in it.
Totally appreciate that. Yeah, exactly. So shame on us.
My understanding is there was no drilling that happened on anyone's personal
It
property.
does, yeah.
You said it was on your house?
Not on my house, but people sitting here had the drill rigs on their private property. Yeah.
They should not have
aware of
done that. They should have been in the road, and if they did.
First picture I sent you. Really?
Yes. My neighbor.
I apologize for
The
that.
fact that you guys didn't reach out before you started survey work, the fact that you didn't reach out
Believe me.
before you started, don't give me that. Because it shows you know as well as I do, we all have been in fisheries meetings, we know how contentious it is.
Evan, I
You know
hear
how
you.
contentious it
I
is.
hear you. I'm telling you right now, we didn't know. So it would not be very common that executives from the company come and talk with you all. We're here because we screwed up. I'm not happy with my team from having done that. I was pissed. You might have been pissed. I was pissed, totally. So we agreed that what we said last night, and I'll say it again tonight, is never again will we do that without telling people it's going to happen. Absolutely. That's part of this discussion. People reached out to us. We had some people that were very vocal about reaching out to us multiple times. Yes.
I have two questions. One is going back to Bigelow, that it would have been helpful if Bigelow had reached out to the community before they made a commitment to you. So that is on Bigelow.
No, I'm sorry, but.
Yep.
Can't hear.
So
I'll step further away. If you want to stand up.
Can you use the meeting?
so
Can you repeat the question first?
that Bigelow would have been in the right to reach out to the community before they signed a contract and made an easement. And
That
that's on,
Bigelow should have reached out.
that's on Bigelow. The second question is, will there be any power that comes out of this that services this community that has needs for power in the season?
Yes, so this, because what this does, it's a power plant, right? So, will this provide power that can be used in the community when
Yes.
it needs it, particularly in the summer season, right? Is that what you're
Correct.
saying? Yeah. So yes, this is bringing power into instead of it coming from Route 1, right? It's power coming from offshore, and it is making more robust source of power. So you're not going to have brownouts and low voltage and things like that. So it should make it more robust. Wind turbines don't run all the time. So it's not all the time, but it's going to run about 80, somewhere 75, 80% of the time.
So assuming this project did prove to be feasible, assuming your permits did go through, assuming the large scale did go through in permitting, where would power for that large scale entity meet land?
So
And if that's in the works, why wouldn't you just put the infrastructure in way of that versus disturbing a small town like this
So
that
good.
wants to be left alone?
Good question. So,
Probably needs to be repeated.
Yes.
yeah, so, yeah, do you want to stand up front and say it so I don't mangle it?
So assuming permitting did go through, assuming it proved to be feasible, assuming the large scale went through, where would that meet ground? Where would that come ashore? And why would they not put their money in, probably the best interest of the company to just put infrastructure in the same location, build upon that versus coming into a community that didn't want to be disturbed and wanted to be left well enough alone? So-
Okay, so there's three different things going on here. One is the sites for a demonstration project. There were three different sites, and I'm a little bit vague on the history. I won't get the right years, but I think we're designated back about 2010, 11. Sites were designated by the state for up to 3 different demonstration projects, then 1 or 2 turbines each. This was the northeasterly most. The others, I don't remember where they were exactly, but this is the only one that then became developed. The University of Maine harnessed and said, yep, this one, obviously their design center is Bangor, so it's closer to them. Somehow it made sense. It was beyond, I can't tell you why they chose that. The future projects are all going to be, I would say, southwest of here. They're going to be closer to Portland because that's where the electric load is and that's where the grid is in the state, right? So they're not going to be near here. So if you look at Monhegan here, rest of
near?
what's that?
What's your version of near?
That's what I was just going to say. So you look at Monhegan here, and these projects kind of off Portland, 120 miles. I'm not pointing the right direction, kind of maybe that way.
120 miles from there.
120 miles from here. So here to off of Portland, right?
Paul's on 120 miles.
No, I know, but they're off of Portland by another 35 miles, 40 miles. So out there. Okay, maybe I don't know, maybe it's 100 miles. A little project like this. Well, what's your give me the distance? I don't know.
Well, you give me the distance, it's your project.
Well, you're shaking your head, so I'm saying yeah, 100 miles long. So right, but if you've been following the research array, it's 40 miles further out off of. So you add 60 miles from here to 40 miles.
It's right on the edge of where they just shut down Austin. So that's not in there anyway. But
Yeah, somewhere in that area. So
yeah.
let's just say pretty far. You're right. Probably off by probably not 100 miles.
Like Freeway Ridge and Flat.
Yeah. So so in any case, it's too long. This is a little project. This is one stinking turbine, and it's one cable that's low voltage. It can't go all the way to a substation in Portland, right? It would just, it's like a ridiculously long cable, right? For a project like this, just not economic. I'm sorry? By putting the project off there, then it's not where the university has poured all of its design, all of its history. There's been geological work off of here. So it's basically starting over again. And then it turns it into irrelevance because
Maybe they
it's,
should talk to the townspeople and stuff before they did all this, make sure that they're happy and then go if it works. Instead of saying, oh, this works, now you guys shove it down our throat.
I apologize that you feel that that's what has happened. It is the nature of development in the
It is what
United
happened.
States. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate
I
that.
didn't even know about the meeting last night, but I take time about a Bigelow.
Yeah.
Everyone else.
Yeah. So I mean, it is the way that power development happens here in the United States. We deal with other countries, and there they have central governments that say how it's going to be done from A to B. It's just different. It's how we do it.
Well, I understand. I understand.
None of us have any say.
I understand. Do you have a question, Ellen? I mean, what is the?
You're just giving more information.
Yeah, no, I'm
Just
saying,
just
I
more
agree.
information, I'm just backing up what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
It's just, it is the
essentially
nature, it's the
government,
nature of the
government-
beast. huh?
Governor Mills has put her foot on the pedal
Yeah.
and said, no, you're gonna have this.
Yeah.
And you got your foot in the door through Bigelow. And what's really sad is that your lack of communication with all of us about this is now hurting Bigelow's reputation. Because
Totally
a
understand.
lot of people here are pissed off at Bigelow for accepting it.
You're here.
And
Right.
they didn't come out to us
Yeah.
because the town of Boothbay opened their arms to Bigelow and said,
Yeah.
please come here when they were looking for a new place.
Right.
And then I don't know what happened in your internal meetings, and somewhere there's a massive disconnect. You don't know how to communicate with humans, and they don't either. They didn't
Yeah.
communicate with the town of East Boothbay.
Yeah, we all lost our manners for COVID. I gotta tell you, not unequivocally, we forgot how to do this. Hey, Evan, I owned it when I stood up here in the first moment. You try doing this. You try doing this, right? I stood up here in the first 2 minutes and apologized to you. Evan, so that everybody knows, Evan specifically guided us a year ago, not a year ago, last winter, not to land at the public landing because it's too contaminated. In that communication, Evan, did I hear you? And did I move? I moved. We didn't do that, right?
Because you wouldn't have been able to go to the public meeting because you would have had to get a vote from the townspeople. The townspeople.
That's not why. We didn't even look at that. We looked at, we took your input,
Town landing to
right?
Bigelow, you moved?
What's that?
You said you moved
Yeah, yeah.
from the town landing?
If we can follow Evan's statement, which I actually believe is true, there's next to nothing.
Which one?
There's next to nothing we can do about it landing here now. So what can we focus on? The issues that I've sent you repeatedly about what happens if you create damage, how's the claim process, what works, what doesn't work, and how will the community benefit from this?
I totally agree. Like, that's very constructive.
Right.
So, unequivocally, if there is any damage, we will compensate you for it. On the
When will we
record,
get that in writing and the process to use?
we're recording right here, right?
Yes.
So I know, so work with me. So where I was going with the timeline, it was up here a few minutes ago. So we're in the early stages of creating basically what we think makes the most sense for a cable group, right? Our goal is in the winter to then say, this is what we think, based on the dialogue that we've had, here's where we think we go. And then we'll find out if you're impacted or you're impacted or you're impacted. And then we'll have the plan that says, right, in writing, you'll be compensated if there's any damage. You had a couple other questions in there. What's in it for the community?
Yeah,
So we said, as we said last night, we are all ears, right? Because we hear you, right? The nature of power development is that local towns, and this is not just Maine, this is many different states, don't actually have input on it. We're talking about here. I said, I'm just giving an example.
I'm just telling you, we're not big.
Totally.
When you keep like circling the wagon with all these like different countries, different
No.
states, another town, we're not any. of them.
I just want you to know that
I
you're
just want you to know
you're
that we're
not
not
singled
in there.
out. Yeah, you're just
You
not
keep
singled
saying
out.
all these things there, but you're wrong.
Fair
And
enough.
you're talking about things that don't make sense.
Well, I think for a lot of people here, it's good to know that Mainers aren't singled out. This is not just unique to Maine, that people don't feel that they have.
That's why Maine is Maine.
Give me just one moment because I want to finish this. Well, actually, I'll go first and then we'll come back to this. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Can you come to this end and talk to the?
Yeah, a couple of questions. First, on the timeline of what you're going to do on land here when the cable comes ashore, and the construction of the tower. How does that dovetail? Is it happening? Are you going to build the tower first and
Yeah.
then see whether it works, and then come ashore and start the construction on shore, on land? Or, I mean, this is experimental. So by the term experimental, you don't know, and we don't know whether whether the turbine's going to work or not, or whether it's going to fall over the next day.
So
We don't know that.
Okay, did everybody hear that? You guys heard that down here?
So that's a really good question so that people understand what experiment is. This is not experimental in the sense of will it float experimental. It will float, it will work. The experiment, let's go back to slide 1. This is really key. The purpose of the project is to prove the economic viability, that you can build these cost effectively, not will it float. It's gonna float. It's just how much is it gonna cost to make this thing float? So part B is the sequence is this gigantic concrete foundation is going to be, it takes like a year to build this thing, right? So that's going to be built on start on land, Mac Point, some part of Eastport, and it's built on land. It is floated in pieces up on barges up to Eastport, and then assembled into one unit and launched there. That would be in the spring of 24. It's launched. Prior winter 23, the cable's done. And this is also that we avoid installing the cable during the summer season, right? When you got more traffic. The wind turbine is erected on that foundation and floated out. The cable's installed that summer. And then cables all connected, power flows. So that power flow would be fall of 2024.
My next question is, Bigelow is built on a contract, in a contract zone. How would you be aware of that? Bigelow Laboratory.
What was that
It's
term?
built in what we call a contract zone, okay? And that's, in other words, they have to, they outline exactly what they're gonna do with the property and all of that, because we don't have an actual zoning for that type of a facility. So it's in the contract zone. And my question is, and maybe Dan knows the answer to this, it is running this cable through the contract zone outlined or within the contract that they have with the town of Boothbay? The contract's with the town of Boothbay. Okay? So I haven't seen a copy of it. My question is, does the contract allow for this?
It's what's considered an essential service, which is allowed throughout town. It is, it's what's considered an essential service, which is allowed throughout town. So basically that's cable wires, power, things of that sort. So that is allowed throughout the town.
I have a question. They are obviously going to get financial gain from this, are they not?
Yes.
So if they're entering into partnership or lease or what have you with a company that's not part of that contract zone, the town doesn't have anything to say about that?
No, it'd be the same thing as CMP.
The same thing as CMP crossing their
It's an experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's an experiment. They don't even know if it's gonna work.
Doesn't matter.
I guess it doesn't.
It's power.
No,
But I think, Jim-
this question went through the town.
Jim, come on up, or at least out far enough.
My name's Jim McManus. I'm from Bigelow Laboratory for Ocean Sciences. Here tonight representing the laboratory. Debbie Bronk, our president and CEO, was here last night, or at the fire station last night. Couldn't be here tonight, so you have me instead. But I am armed with lots of business cards of Debbie, and we would be happy to talk to anybody about Bigelow's decision to allow Aqua Ventus to land a cable on our property. We do not want to undermine the current conversation, which is between Aqua Ventus and the town. A fair question is why, and I will give you two very simple reasons why, and I'll go from there. One, it aligns with our mission of research. That is, it's a demonstration project to demonstrate whether or not I won't speak, Chris can say it much better than I. Second is it aligns with our mission and our goals of carbon low or carbon, negative carbon power. So no carbon or low carbon power. And what I will say also is that, you know, the question came up, what is Bigelow getting out of this? So we divulged last night, we agreed for the exploration for $50,000 for the life of the project. If it actually went through Bigelow, it's $200,000. I will tell you that we did not do this for the money. We did this, and I led with the why, and that is the why. We did it because we want a world that does not have, where we're not burning as much fossil fuel as we are. And the project, we've been told from the very beginning, would be quite small and minimal impact. One of the reasons we said yes was we were told that the lines were going to be buried and would not be high, and it would be small and low impact on the community. So that's our understanding. That's the answer to why did we do this. And I will hang around till the end of the meeting and give anybody.
And the reasons you did it, I fully and 100% support. Get us all to a green energy. But I would ask you to publicly apologize to us all for making a decision that affects the entire community, which goes against your tenants and their tenants, that you will be good neighbors. This is a clear example where you've not been a good neighbor.
We apologized last night. And
I wasn't here last night.
Me neither.
let me finish. And I will apologize again tonight that our part in this was not well communicated.
It wasn't communicated at all.
Fair enough.
Why not?
Yeah, why? Why do you not hold us in any regard at all?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say it, where I started is we collectively screwed up, right? We had.
It doesn't really bother anyway.
I'd like to hear from Bigelow Lab.
Yeah.
Yeah, why did you ask that? Why did you have to do that at all?
Our understanding at the time was that this was going to be a very low impact project, and our.
So what's the impact on the ocean? With this low impact, on like digging a trench, supposedly. What's the impact on the ocean for? And like, what if it goes wrong? Out there, for some odd reason. It's an experiment.
They don't dig it, they blast it.
Yeah.
With a water
We
jet.
don't blast it. Just
6
to
feet
be
deep.
clear, it's got that same impact as a scallop. trench.
No.
So
No,
what
it
we're
doesn't
doing.
either.
You've got a water.
Have you seen that? Have you seen what the
Okay.
ocean floor looks like? If you see
No,
the image of
probably a
the
little more than you have.
No, I know. So here's what it is. So here's what it is. It's a jet plow. Yeah, it digs it in about 6 feet deep, right? And it
Scallop trenches don't
leaves
dig
a little
6
bit.
feet.
It kills
There's only so
everything in
much
its
mud,
path.
you know, there is that bottom of it. I think you guys
Yeah,
can
yeah,
notice
no,
that.
exactly. But
So
what we've done is we spent a lot of money figuring out where the route is that this could be buried. That's what the fund was about last summer. Fishermen
Yeah,
didn't
we
like-
tried it out there.
Yeah, it was zigzagging to find a route where it could be buried, so you wouldn't have to go over hard water.
The
There's a couple
Bigelow
places that
fellow
are.
didn't finish telling us about, no. You were in the middle of telling us how you didn't communicate with us because you thought this was a low impact project.
We thought that this was a low impact
Do
project.
you still think that?
I honestly don't know, to be quite frank with you, I honestly don't know.
Does industrializing the Gulf of Maine align with your goals?
So hang on, just, I have to belt.
He can answer the question.
Yeah.
I, to be honest, I didn't hear the question.
Does industrializing the Gulf of Maine align with Bigelow's goals?
I don't know what you mean by industrializing the Gulf
If
of
there's no
Maine.
windmills there now, there will be. That's in, yes.
Using it for power.
Does-
When you say you're building industry, you could very well hurt another also. It's been there for hundreds of years,
Displacing the lobster.
all kinds of other things.
Our
all
perception
these way over-
was that this demonstration project would not do that.
This demonstration project will lead to bigger projects. That's,
Oh,
it
they
says it
promised
right
it's
there.
not.
You need this project for the bigger scheme.
Exactly, that's the
It's
goal.
100.
So
what
this
this
project-
I'm
wait,
happy
hang
to
on.
talk offline about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, but
I
let me,
really am.
let's just take this one offshore. Why do we build offshore wind? It's not for fun. It's because it's a
No.
mitigation.
It's exactly for your wallet.
No, it's for mitigation. Let me tell you, I went to work 1983 out of college to build solar projects, right? I've been doing this for 40 years, building renewable energy. This is not, if I wanted, was it in the money, in it for the money, I would have done something else. So let me bring that back. You can take on my integrity all you want,
I'm not taking
you will lose.
Question integrity.
Yes, you did. You said we're only in it for the money.
I think a lot of people said that, not just singular to me, but go ahead.
That's fine. You were talking at the moment, so I'm directing my comments to you. So if you want to direct comments to me, I'm going to direct them back to you.
Go
So
ahead,
let's just
call
be
it out.
really, I'm happy to call you out anytime if you want to call me out. That's great. Right?
Well, it's not constructive.
So let's take this to the higher level where the purpose of this, and this is why we were so glad to find Bigelow, is there's an alignment here. You can call it industrializing the ocean. We call it about mitigating the impacts of the ocean. If we don't mitigate the impacts, there won't be in 50 years Maine lobstermen. I'll be freaking Canadian. When I was a kid,
What do you base
when
that
I
on?
was a
No, what do you
kid,
base that on?
do you want
What do
to
you want?
know what I based that on? No, let me just take this as an example, because I lived it. When I was a kid on Eastern Long Island, there were
Yeah, they
lobsters.
contribute 80% of that to pesticide.
There were lobsters in Long Island Sound. They are gone south of Cape Cod now. You guys know that they're moving north. More and more they're moving. If we don't have it, impact.
That's bullshit.
All right, fine. Fine, let's hang on just 1 minute. Hang on, y'all. That you may not agree with me. There's enough people that agree that are in charge of policy for the state, that this is the direction that they've gone with. Let's just agree to disagree. This is the policy that was set by the state. And that's what we're doing is we're working with that policy. We're helping the state achieve the goals to avoid hurting you guys, but also build a new industry. That's the goal. Yeah.
I'd like to hear back from the Bigelow laboratory gentleman. He can come back out.
Sorry, Jim. What would you like? Round 3.
Well, I just heard you talking about constitution of the nation. How long? You said it 5 minutes. Bring money for birds or anything like that. It seems like we're going to sacrifice one thing for another.
That's being done.
Now, another thing I'd like to hear from these guys with the development of this project is all I'm reading around the world is all these lubricants taken out to fill these wind turbines and then they'll come back. Where do they go? On all the hydraulic.
So I'll answer the question is the environmental impact statements are Aqua Ventus' responsibility.
Not you, I thought you were time.
Somebody has to pay for it.
It's a permitting
process. That's very thorough.
So the cable's gonna be buried out there from the beginning. And then, I believe in the contract, it says that you have to remove the cable when the project is done.
Yep.
And so you'll remove that cable all the way to the beginning.
Yep. You had a question?
No, Duncan said, removing the cable would be foolish.
And then what we talked about is to say that the requirements for the permit is that we have to decommission the asset. And the question is, in 20 years' time, does it make sense to pull up that cable or leave it and abandon it in place, understanding that it's buried?
Okay, but you haven't provided us with geo work yet, hydrographic work as to where you're going to have to put mats or where you're going to have to bury it underground. No, listen to me.
You're right.
If you don't remove that cable and the mats come off for some sort of fishing stuff and you guys are gone and somebody gets hurt or there's some issue and you've left the flat cable there, then you really have to remove it. The other question is Bigelow okay at the end of 20 years with you just leaving a cable?
We're not. The base case is we remove it. We're obligated to remove it. If people in 20 years decide they don't want to live through the removal, then that's a decision in 20 years. We're obligated to take it out. We could have a town meeting in 20 years and people would say, don't take it out, don't take up the streets. I don't know. So it's a decision that will come up. You know, we're planning to remove it. We've got to post, you know, financial security to be able to remove it. It won't be abandoned. But this woman here has been waiting a long time.
Hi, Kristen Warner. I have my own property on Mass Ave, trying to talk loud, so I don't want to take my mask off. Can I see the map of the proposed routes? And I have a question with respect to that map. Plotting it from Bigelow through Mass Ave, which is where I live, which is why I'm most concerned with it. Can you show me where along that map you did the core drilling and what were the results?
I don't think we have the results all yet, but I can talk about where.
The core drilling that was done started on the Bigelow property. The two drills that were done on Green Landing, one was just, I'm going to call it south of Rachel's house. The second drill that was done was between Rachel's house and David's house on Green Landing. We then came on School Street. We, I think there were two, possibly three locations. Where's the gentleman in the crowd? He may have, this gentleman right here, right in front of his house. The next location that we did was on the corner of Liz's property at the general store in East Boothbay. We came down Murray Hill Road. We did a number, I think a location. It would be near the Newtons where Steve is, etc. We then came up, we did a location that was right next to Pauline's house, just up the street from there. And the last one that we did was on the corner of where Mass Ave turns into or West Street Extension, Virginia Lane, or however you want to call it. And I believe we did one right near the gate that was between Virginia and West Street Extension. After that, we did a number of holes along Ocean Point Road, all the way to the point of interconnection, which is here. So we did roughly 54 holes. We did, I can't tell you the number of sample cores that we did, but we did, I want to say, sample cores were like every 1,000 feet. The probes were every 300 feet to get a sense of where we would go, how far down we would get before we had rejection in terms of getting to ledge.
Yeah, for each of these routes, is there a clear right of way across each and every one?
What we're looking to do, or what we had done with this, is to utilize what we thought were existing utility corridors, existing roads. So with respect to Ocean Point Road, State Highway, School Street, Town of Boothbay Road, Greenpoint Landing, Town of Boothbay Road, understanding that by staying in the road, we're utilizing an existing disturbed utility corridor. By coming down Murray Hill Road, again, Town of Boothbay Road, looking to stay in the road, not on the edge of the road, not going through people's property, so that we can utilize an existing disturbed area for that, understanding that I want to say it was 2005 that the new potable water line was installed, that came out, went down School Street. I'm not sure if it was the same vintage or time frame, that it then came down Murray Hill Road and connected into this development here off of I think it's Prescott.
Presley.
So, you know, what we would look to do is, that's been marked out. Here's where we would look to be, and understanding that when the potable water line was put in, it was put in to be, because it's a potable water line, it needs to be at a minimum 5 feet below the surface. And therefore, hearing from a number of people, and a gentleman over in off Presley Street that says it was extremely disruptive at the time. What we're trying to do through our subsurface work is understand what's there, see how we can design something that is less intrusive. And as Chris has said earlier, blasting is my preferred last option, and to minimize, if I have to do anything, to say, where do I, if I had to do it, where is that? And understanding, because I'm trying to stay away from that. I want to be as disruptive or least disruptive as possible. So those are the routes that we're evaluating. And this is what was considered, and as I said, the test route came this direction here.
So don't they have a question about the potable water line?
Yep.
Which comes into the confluence of Mass Ave and Murray Hill Road, but as it goes up Mass Ave, that's an above ground line. There
Yes.
is nothing buried up there.
Correct.
There's no precedence for having that happen.
So again, what we're, having the drawings of saying, here's where the potable water line is, here's the other services that are in that corridor, and trying to avoid them and trying to utilize an existing road or what we thought were existing roads that were maintained by the town of Boothbay, to utilize this to understand, I'm not coming across somebody's personal property, I'm going down the road. And that way the disturbance is, I open up the road, I put in the equipment that I want to put in the cable, the conduits, etc. I close it up, I pave it over, and we disappear for 20 years.
Except that Murray Hill is all away.
And I'm hoping that at the beginning of January, I'm supposed to get a draft report from my geotechnical company that says, here's what we have. Then I can sit down with my engineering company and say, okay, based on the geotechnical, here's what we have, here's what our options are. And we went through this on one of the previous reports to say, is it a narrow trench? The cables are all in one conduit. Communication fiber optic is in a second, or is it something that we can spread out, recognizing that based on how much surface that we have to work with, here's what we can do. And it's putting that design together and then coming back into the community and talking with you saying, here's what we see. And then last night there was a discussion about saying, well, here's another alternative that we should explore. So we started with that today, starting meeting with Bigelow this afternoon to say, okay, Tim, you're the facility supervisor. What's in your driveway? Because we hadn't looked at it before. So what's down there now? What do I have to worry about? I've got conduit there. I've got other structures that I have to now design around. So I got to figure that out. So I'm less than 24 hours into this, but we've started that discussion.
It's my understanding that this is three-phase power size lines. Why not put them in the poles? You'd avoid a lot of hassle by not burying them. Put them in the poles, and if you have to remove it, it's a lot easier to remove as well.
So we don't have access to the existing poles, so it would be additional poles, and that's what we
It'd still
had
be
been
cheaper.
led to believe. No, it would definitely be cheaper. We led
Brand
them.
new poles the whole way, it'd be
Yeah.
cheaper.
No, I totally agree.
And you wouldn't
We
have all these
understood that people
here.
wouldn't like that. Yeah. Yeah, that's,
Pole that would go in is, it would be either a separate pole or it would be a replacement of the pole that's there, making it taller. And so now we have multiple services on that same pole. So you have your telecommunications, you have your existing distribution system that feeds your house.
Right.
You then have up above that additional power. So we felt in our decision, going underground would be less intrusive, less obvious with its impact. on the community.
and this is what we're
It's
going
looking
to,
like it's not gonna be less intrusive though, actually.
Well,
You have a lot of
we
ledge
had a
going
lot
up
of
over
input
that
from
route
last
that
night.
you're looking at. I know. It's a water company for years. There's gonna be a lot of ledge blasting from the route that you're looking at.
But understand, here's what the water company has to do.
it's different than us.
We're
It's
different.
very similar, actually.
Well, no, this is remember this one, 18 inches, 18 inches.
Yeah.
You got to be 5 feet down. That's like, it is night and day. So there's a lot of road surfaces are filled, because even to pave, you don't want to pave right on top of rocks. You want to fill in. So that's what we're looking for, is where there is that route. And that's what this exploration is about. So the goal is not to make it a big old trench. It's to
Yeah.
make it a little 18-inch wide, 18-inch deep trench. I mean, that literally that big. That's the goal.
It sounds good, but it never happens that way.
Well, that's what we have to explore. No,
Yeah.
I'm with it totally. But it's an engineering thing. We don't have the answers yet. That's what we have to figure out. Yeah.
Just to give everybody some information, it's not out there right now. The route they're talking about going up over Mass Ave, up over the hill and out Virginia Street to 96. When you get
if anybody that's been up Mass Ave, when you make that sharp corner, it goes from Mass Ave, it turns into West Street. When you get a little ways up that hill, where the emergency access road is, where the steel gate is, if you're familiar with that, that's privately owned up there. Sarah and I, Chris and Sherry Goodwin, Nat Wang, and Donnie and Marcia Solar own that property. This doesn't fall under eminent domain. And the four of us have made a decision, we're not going to allow it to go that way. So just to give you some background on that route, there's private property standing there right there.
So that's why. But, I'm sorry?
What would be the most expensive route for you to go that?
Well, what we were hoping was that so first of all, I think it was a mistake, didn't know that you guys owned it, thought that emergency use access was actually town road. It was, that we learned, that was great. So that's why last night we said, you're right, it's a great idea, let's stay on that, go right to 96 and stay on 96. So good point. That was what we early on were pointing out is the change to what you see in these diagrams. We would go to the red route. Yes.
So if you stay on 96, if you come out Bigelow driveway and you stay on 96, are you going to do the test bores in that route so that you have the equivalent information before you make your decision?
Yep, and probably Bigelow. We'd have to come back and do some additional test work. My guess is based on the speed at which the team that did this work was able to operate at. We would look to get it probably done in a day. Second, based on availability, if there's a truck mounted rig that we can use versus a rubber track vehicle, we would look to do that because it's faster through the process than saying, here's the number of test bores that we would look to do to say, here's, I can't tell you the number of cores, might be one or two, maybe three, but here's the holes that we would hope to be able to have that data as well.
And we give notice
Ahead of time. At least a week.
Yes.
No, we will.
So a couple things we reviewed last night, aside from the separate route going down Bigelow's driveway and going down 96, ways to benefit the community. If we do go down 96, we repave 96 where you guys go. Fresh pavement, that's nice.
Right.
You had mentioned sidewalk.
Yep.
Whatever, bicycle path, I don't see that because it's, wide and.
Where are you gonna put it?
Where are you gonna put it? So I don't see that. Another thing that we brought up last night was a substation. And that was kind of a concern to me, especially looking at this map today. You had discussed where your bore sites had been.
Yep.
And you said up to Virginia Street.
Right.
And we stopped there maybe because it's a common route. I just want to clarify now that there's no plan to have a substation near Virginia and then have above ground line.
We did bores from Bigelow Labs all the way.
To 27.
So we did that, and again, that was done, I want to say 2 weeks ago, or finished 2 weeks ago. It was a Friday that finished, but we did all our testing along here because at that point in time, it's trying to figure out how to get from Bigelow to essentially Virginia Lane and Ocean Point Road. After that, it's the only road.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
There's
the
no
common
choice.
road is, what I was.
Yeah, so saying, how do we get to that common point?
Getting to the substation we have now by Hanford, the plan would be to have an additional next door to it, abutting that substation.
The best.
Nothing.
How are you gonna do that? Someone just bought home.
We don't know. We actually don't know yet. So that's part of where we're in the middle of this figuring stuff out. And so when we get back to that timeline, the plan is to have that information available late winter and be able to say, okay, here's the whole route. Here's why we went here. Here's where we think the substation is, and be able to put that in front of them.
And
We don't have the answer.
will there be a substation at Bigelow where it comes on the ground, or does the cable
No,
just?
no. The whole purpose of the substation is to match the voltages.
Right. Will
There's
you
always a
see
mismatch of
anything at the beach though at Bigelow?
I'm sorry?
Will you see anything at the beach at Bigelow?
Question is, will you see anything at the beach at Bigelow? No, when the cable is done, you won't see anything. You won't see anything. It's all underground. Even at the beach at Bigelow. I'm sorry? I don't know. I honestly don't know about the trees at that exact place, but yeah. Right.
you said it'd be roughly about 18 inches down to the ground. What's the voltage and the current expected on this line?
So 18 inches is what we're gunning for,
Right.
Right? So that would be ideal. If we could find a place where there isn't ledge, where it is sand and gravel, could be bigger.
Voltage and the current.
So I don't know the current voltage, 66 kV, something like that. I don't know what the current, the amps are not that high.
Could you repeat the voltage?
66 kV.
6 kV, understanding.
I mean, that's a lot of power.
Well, it's up to 11 megawatts of power.
Right. So
So it's kind of like what's out here, right?
Somebody's backyard.
I'm sorry?
What about RF? Somebody's backyard.
So this is hugely mitigated compared to the overhead lines because it's underground. It's, if you look at this,
Still gonna get transmission.
I have to say, I'm not an electrical engineer. What I have come to understand, there is zero, right, when you're like 10 feet away, zero. I don't know what it is.
EMF is mitigated mostly because the cables are in the same conduit. That's the main reason.
They
why
cancel each
EMF
other
is-
out, three-phase power.
So at 10 feet, there would be pretty much zero EMF, but we don't know exactly yet because we don't have the final.
Depends on what the soil is and how deep you bury it and these are single phase but armored cables. Yeah, so the EMF thing is not really
What is it in the water?
it's 6 feet down, so it's even.
Some places it isn't 6 feet down, some places it's just gonna be a matter.
Yeah, it could be some places. I don't remember. Do you remember the geotech, whether there are any areas, short areas of that? Or did we bury it the whole way?
Right now, when we started the investigation program, we're 78% buried. I do not know how much we have increased that. The objective for the river is to be able to be buried in the river the entire way from the mouth all the way to where we come on shore.
I just know that question was asked frequently during discussions with the lobstermen last spring, and no
Yeah.
one would really answer that question.
Well, because there aren't black and white answers. What I'm going to
Well, there's
point
never
back
black
to,
and white answers.
I'm going to point,
So-
no, there's sort of, let's say it's a little mushy. I'm just going to tell you, Vinyl Haven for 25 years operated not buried. And then it
I'm
got
just
buried.
asking what it is, that's all. I
No,
don't know
I'm
if it
saying,
is or
I'm just
not.
saying,
just asking you.
fishermen
Once
ask the
it's
questions, right? I'm just
designed-
saying, fishermen, probably more than anybody, have fished around this for decades and haven't had a problem.
But
That
once
I- that I've
it's,
heard.
once it's designed, we'll be able to tell you what it's gonna be. And our
Yeah.
target is to say, we don't wanna have something high, we'd like to have something that's very acceptable from what's available in the community. And
But it always seems with all of these projects, the cart is always before the horse, because you can't tell us the answers until it's done. It's like you asked about if the windmill is gonna work or not before you put the cable in. Well, you can't do that.
We have to have a design to get into the real permitting process and get an approval. That approval is based on the finding of no significant impact environmentally. And EMF is part of that approval.
Just clarification, I don't know if you can answer this or Jim from Bigelow. Because I'm a little confused, because I spoke with Debbie, who's the head of Bigelow, the other day. And I thought she told me, because I said, oh, Bigelow's inked this deal behind closed doors. And she told me, or I thought she told me, that the deal wasn't actually 100% finalized. I thought she told me that where you guys are all at agreement-wise is that you've agreed to allow them to explore that. But she said to actually allow them to do it wasn't finalized. But then last night, my son asked the question, if Bigelow at this point has an option to back out. So can you just clarify at this point, like, do you have the option to back out or you don't have the option to back out?
I can answer your question.
Yeah, I don't care who
It has to be mutual.
What's
It
that?
has to be mutual. So both companies would have to agree to back out.
So if one of you does and one doesn't, so no matter what?
Yeah, like most agreements. Yeah.
And the reason I ask is because I appreciate you coming and apologizing, but there's an old saying that goes, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. And I kind of feel that's where we're at. And in my conversation with Debbie, and I wish she was here so that she could verify that I'm not making anything up. But she told me that the reason Bigelow decided this was because somewhere along the way, somebody has to decide to do the right thing. And my response to her was, by whose definition, though, is the right thing? Me, as a resident of East Boothbay and a resident of the peninsula, I feel like Bigelow is taking a stand here that we fight all the time. And, you know, I'm probably speaking to the wind at this point because it doesn't sound like there's anything to do. I love to see people move here from away because they move here because they love the way it is here. Unfortunately, with any luck, it's a 50-50 split. You get the people that come here and want to fit in and want to live the way it is. Then you get the people that come here and decide we're very backward, we don't know what we're doing, we can't appreciate the bigger picture, and so they decide for us what's right. And as a neighbor of Bigelow Lab, I'm extremely incensed that you guys took it upon yourselves to do the right thing for this whole community. The one thing Debbie said to me was, she said, unfortunately, because I expressed to her, I've got a 19-year-old son who's invested a lot of money, like a lot of the guys sitting here, for a fishery. And what she told me was, unfortunately, when it comes time to do the right thing, sometimes a few have to sacrifice for the betterment of everyone. And I said to her, well, you know who makes that statement? Somebody who's not sacrificing. And so, like I say, I'm really incensed over the fact, I mean, like I said, these guys are doing what businessmen do. They're coming in and they're going to make money for their company. That's what they're hired to do. To me, Bigelow gave these guys the key to the city with no idea what they were going to do once the gate was open to them. And so now for you to come and say, well, you know, the project part of it's kind of out of our hands is really lame to me. And like I say, I probably said this all wasted breath, I'll never get back again. But I think it needs to be said. And what really bothers me is, I really don't think you guys care because I really think you have taken the moral high ground that you're going to fix the world for the rest of us idiots that don't know enough to do it ourselves, but you're going to do it on our backs and at our inconvenience. So I'd love to see Bigelow put something in the paper, or you know what? Better yet, because I know this wasn't a decision that Debbie made alone. Why doesn't the board of Bigelow come take it on the chin? Why don't they come? I mean, at least you guys have got. I don't see any of the high and mighty people on the executive committee of Bigelow out here explaining to us why they have to save us all. So like I said, you want to take something back to Bigelow? Ask them to hold a public forum in that nice, beautiful building over in East Boothbay, where we can all come vent our frustration to them and have them tell us, well, sorry, looking back, we probably should have done it different. Here, here. Well, they did say this, sorry, Andrew. Don't forget that.
So one line of discussion that I feel like we didn't completely finish, something you brought up before. I don't know how we got off track. You were naming sidewalks and something else, but I just wanted to open it up to, we don't want to be bad neighbors. We do want to hear, I know, I love that creates laughter. All right, then forget it. I'll take it back. We'll close up. I was going to offer to say, what does the community need? Let's finish that discussion. That was the offer.
The other part is that we've got email addresses for people who are new tonight. We've got email addresses of people who joined us last night. The purpose of that is to then be able to create a mailing list so that as we have information, it's getting it in the community as quickly as we can.
Yeah, that's great. But maybe that's the forum when you get emails like that. If people have suggestions, we would be glad to entertain them, hear what people have to say.
Another suggestion they made once before, November 12th, is that Dan of the town use the assessor's data. We've gone over this before. It was one of the bullet points that Paul left out of his bullet points that we had to ask for 3 times. Use the assessor's data to get people's mailing lists and addresses along the cable route so that you can mail these to them in a timely fashion.
Evan, I've done that personally. To
You
go
did?
through, to take the assessor's database, match it to everything that's there. So that when we have a piece of information, I can go to Pauline and say, here's her email address. Here's her postal address over in East Boothbay. I've
Okay.
talked with the postmaster in East Boothbay to say, here's how we get information. So I'm going to show up with a basket of letters and say, here's everybody's address, put it in there. So we're finding ways.
So that's what happened for the notifications for this meeting.
For this meeting, I think
No, it's too late. We didn't mail these out.
for tonight, because we were supposed to be at the fire hall tonight.
No,
And
no,
because
no,
of
no, 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 no. When you came around on Friday, last Friday, we handed out flyers.
I was here on Wednesday, yes?
I was
Okay.
following one of the days. I
Yeah.
think it was Friday, and my wife said you stop by. But regardless, so that's, you use that data to be able to get notifications out to people along the route for these 2 meetings.
And we were attempting, yes, we went door to door. We're getting that information. We now have a very comprehensive list that we pulled together to get this understanding that along the route, there is a number of people that are seasonal residents. And so if I put it in the postal box,